Welcome to Twisted Truths, where betrayal meets brutal payback, and where the most unexpected twists expose what people are really capable of. This story isn't just shocking, it's personal. My name is Javier Cortez, and 5 weeks ago, my father, Judge Miguel Cortez, looked me in the eye across a candlelit dining room, surrounded by portraits of Ivy League graduates and courthouse medals, and called me a disgrace to the family. Not because I got arrested. Not because I'd done something shameful. No, because I had the audacity to say no. No, I'm not joining the firm. He wanted me to wear the family legacy like a golden noose. Cortez and Burke LLP had been built brick by brick through decades of litigation and generational guilt. My grandfather, great-uncle, cousins, they were all attorneys. Partners. The kind who smiled in courtrooms and sharpened their teeth behind closed doors. And I wanted to build code. I wanted to create. I wasn't some tech bro looking to make the next dating app or meme generator. I'd spent the last 4 years quietly building a back-end AI platform, DocuLink AI, that was already being used by legal departments across 7 states. I'd created an engine that could draft and process complex legal documents in a fraction of the time, with machine learning that reduced errors by 93%. We'd secured funding, hired a small team, and were in the final stages of acquisition negotiations with a multinational firm. But none of that mattered to my parents. To them, I was still just playing on my computer. "You're wasting your degree," my mother said, eyes sharp behind her gold-rimmed glasses. "You could be in court by now, fighting real battles, not hiding behind screens." She always said that. Real battles. Because in their world, a courtroom was where you became someone. Not a server room. Not a code base. Not a startup. They saw my work as some sad rebellion. A phase I'd grow out of when I finally realized real wealth came from $600 per hour billable rates and firm nameplates etched in mahogany. And to be honest, I tried to convince myself that maybe they'd come around. That if I just showed them the numbers, the growth charts, the pipeline, maybe they'd see. I even brought them to our office one afternoon. Our sleek workspace in downtown Austin. A dozen young engineers in hoodies and headsets. Screens alive with real-time analytics and dashboards showing our legal AI scanning thousands of documents per second. My mother stepped over a charging cable, nose wrinkled like she'd stepped in something. My father looked around and said, "Where's your corner office?" That was the day I stopped trying to win their approval. But the real betrayal came later, when they tried to force me back into the fold. 3 weeks ago, I got an envelope delivered by courier. Inside was a junior partnership agreement, already signed by every senior partner at Cortez and Burke, including my cousin Lorenzo, who once plagiarized my high school valedictorian speech. The letter was printed on thick embossed stationery. They offered me a 12% stake. 6 figures. My own office. Prestige. Power. The whole thing. But there was no phone call. No conversation. Just a contract with a deadline. It was a power play. An ultimatum in fancy legalese. Come back, Javier. Or be forgotten. I didn't sign. Instead, I went to Sunday dinner, sat at the head of the table, and told them I was walking away for good. I told them about the acquisition offer for DocuLink AI, $52 million from a firm in Silicon Valley, with me retaining creative control and 3.2 million shares post-merger. I told them we had 5 Fortune 500 clients already using our tools. And my father? He laughed. "You think that's success," he barked. "You're nothing without this family. That software. It's a fad. A toy." My mother didn't even look at me. She just picked up the contract I brought to show them and slid it back across the table like it was a used napkin. I stood, took a breath, and said it calmly. "You won't have to worry about my name tarnishing yours anymore. I'm changing it legally, to Javier Reyes. Cortez doesn't belong to me anymore. You'd think I stabbed them. My father's face turned a color I didn't know existed. My mother gasped like I'd dropped a baby. A disgrace, he whispered. You are a disgrace. And just like that, I walked out. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't have known, was that the deal had already closed. That night, I went back to my apartment, pulled out a bottle of single malt I'd been saving for the right moment, and toasted the death of my past. I wasn't their legacy anymore. I was something else. Something they couldn't control. But I wasn't finished. They thought they'd dismissed me. What they didn't realize was that they'd just made a very public enemy. When I changed my name, I thought it would be empowering. I thought letting go of Cortez would feel like shedding dead weight. But what no one tells you about walking away from your family is that even when the door slams behind you, the silence can crush your chest. For 2 weeks after that dinner, I barely left my apartment. The acquisition had gone through. The money was real. The stocks were climbing. My bank account showed numbers I couldn't wrap my head around. I had everything I said I wanted: freedom, power, respect in my own field. But I wasn't happy. Not even close. It hit me on a Tuesday. I was sitting in the apartment I'd spent years dreaming about, drinking from a $90 coffee machine, staring out at the Austin skyline. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt empty. Like I had spent the past 5 years building a rocket, only to launch it into space alone. My team was excited. They were planning upgrades, new product lines, maybe even an IPO down the line. But me? I was just the guy who used to be somebody's son. No text from my mother. No message from my father. Not even a "good luck" from my cousin Lorenzo, who used to copy my homework and tell me I was the only reason he graduated. They'd cut me off. And despite everything, the success, the headlines, the money, part of me still desperately wanted them to call. To say, "We were wrong. We see it now." But it never came. I started avoiding people. I skipped meetings. Dodged investor calls. I even ignored a congratulatory message from one of the partners at the firm that acquired us. I told everyone I was taking a break. But the truth? I was spiraling. Because I realized something brutal. My parents didn't love me unconditionally. They loved the idea of me. The fantasy version. The perfect legacy son. The Javier who wore custom-tailored suits and made closing arguments in federal court. Not the Javier who wrote machine learning code at 2 a.m. in a hoodie and built empires from a laptop. It wasn't just rejection. It was erasure. And when the Chicago Tribune published the piece, "Texas Tech Star Sells AI Startup for $52 million, Meet Javier Reyes," I braced for the call. The story used my new name. My new identity. And still, nothing. That's when it hit me, they weren't going to call. They weren't going to apologize. Or show up. Or say they were proud. Because if they acknowledged my success, they'd have to admit they were wrong. And that? That would mean surrendering control. I remember waking up one morning, staring at the ceiling, wondering if this is what winning felt like. A quiet apartment. A muted phone. A fortune in my bank and an ache in my chest. I walked past my office whiteboard, where months ago I scribbled goals like $50M valuation, 5 enterprise clients, and exit by Q4. Every box was checked. But none of it mattered. Not when you feel like a ghost in your own story. I started dreaming about family dinners I was no longer invited to. Of birthdays they didn't call for. Of holidays where my name wasn't mentioned at all. And it wasn't just them, it was the people who used to orbit around me. Old friends from law school. Mentors who disappeared when I didn't take the bar exam. Even my sister-in-law, who once called me the smart one, unfollowed me after the article dropped. Like my success had become offensive. Like my independence was a betrayal. That's the part no one prepares you for. When success makes you lonelier than failure ever did. I'd spent years telling myself that if I just worked hard enough, they'd have no choice but to respect me. But now that I'd made it, I saw the truth. They never wanted me to succeed without them. Because my success proved you could walk away. And for people like them, that was the real betrayal. One night, I went back and opened the partnership contract they had sent. It was still sitting in my Dropbox. 12% stake. Office with my name on the door. The illusion of inclusion. But every line read like a leash. Hidden clauses about decision-making rights, exit restrictions, and mandatory yearly reviews from the senior partners, aka my father and his cronies. It wasn't an invitation. It was a cage. And if I had signed it, I would have spent the rest of my life begging for scraps at a table I could have owned. I didn't cry. But I felt something break. Like a thread snapping inside. That's when I knew. This wasn't about forgiveness anymore. This was about revenge. Not the petty kind. Not shouting matches or Facebook rants. I wanted strategic retribution. I wanted the world to see me rise so high that their silence would echo through every boardroom, courtroom, and legacy gala they walked into. They wanted me out of the family. Fine. But they were about to learn exactly what they lost. Not through words. But through headlines. Through market shifts. Through the kinds of whispers that make empires shake. Because now I had clarity. And $52 million worth of ammo. The day everything changed, again, didn't start with fire. It started with a casual scroll through LinkedIn. I wasn't looking for anything. Just passing time while waiting for a call with the CTO at the acquiring firm. But then I saw it. A job post. Seeking full-stack developer, AI workflow tools. Based in Chicago. Discretion and experience with legal backend systems preferred. Competitive salary. Bonus structure available. Cortez and Burke LLP. I blinked. Then blinked again. Why would Cortez and Burke be looking for a developer? They hated everything I did. Hated AI. Hated automation. Hated the idea that machines could draft legal documents better than junior associates. And now they wanted, what? A discrete AI engineer. Something wasn't right. Curious, I clicked the company profile. There weren't many clues, just a standard law firm page with a handful of vague posts about modernizing our infrastructure and embracing innovation. But I knew the language. It wasn't for clients. It was bait. For someone like me. That's when I started digging. I had contacts. People who still worked in tech, even a few in legal analytics. I reached out to a friend of mine, June, who now ran a data indexing firm that worked with some mid-sized law firms. Hey, does Cortez and Burke have any unusual tech acquisitions lately? June replied within 15 minutes. Not acquisitions. But they did license a proprietary AI module 6 weeks ago from a Delaware holding company. Real hush-hush. Shell Corp. No public branding. Module name, Linkverse X. My heart froze. Linkverse X was the internal name we used for the early beta of DocuLink AI. The version that predated our commercial release. The one that had never been made public. The one I had only ever shared with one person outside my team. My cousin Lorenzo. 2 years ago, over drinks at a family function, he'd asked me about my project. Said he was curious. Said he wanted to understand what I was working on. That he respected it, even if the firm didn't. Like an idiot, I'd shown him a basic demo on my tablet. Just to prove a point. Just to feel seen. He'd smiled. Asked questions. Nodded like he cared. But that version of the code? It had a fingerprint. A unique flag embedded into its root script, a harmless Easter egg I'd inserted for fun. // built by Reyes, if you stole this, you owe me an apology. No one else ever saw it. It was just a joke. A signature. But now I wasn't laughing. Because Cortez and Burke had licensed that exact code, my code, through a holding company, rebranded it, and started using it, behind my back. After disowning me. After calling me a disgrace. After kicking me out of the family. After mocking everything I had built. They'd turned around and stolen it. I called Trevor. Check our IP logs. See if there's been any duplicate access or unauthorized distributions from 2 years ago. Anything before our Series A. He sounded tense. What's going on? Just check. And verify if there was any access from Chicago, specifically a user ID ending in LZ1. That was the ID Lorenzo had used when I sent him the demo. 10 minutes later, I had my answer. Trevor called, voice tight. That build got copied. 2 weeks after you showed it to him. We didn't catch it because it wasn't active code, it was a deprecated branch. And it was cloned into a private Git repo linked to an offshore IP. From there, it could have gone anywhere. We assumed it was dead code. You never mentioned it. I sank into my chair. I had mentioned it. I just didn't think anyone would ever steal it. Least of all family. You okay? Trevor asked. No. I wasn't. Because suddenly, this wasn't just about rejection. It was about theft. Betrayal layered on top of betrayal. My own blood had stolen my work. My own family had licensed it behind my back. And now they were pretending they'd built something new. Modernizing their firm with tools they'd condemned me for. I checked the license registry June had sent. The shell company that held the software rights? Valley Core Solutions LLC. A tiny Delaware-registered firm with no website, no staff, and one listed executive officer. Miguel Cortez Jr. My father. That's when I snapped. They didn't just want me out, they wanted to replace me. They couldn't control me. So they stole me. Everything I had built, they'd hijacked. Quietly. Secretly. Behind my back. Licensing my own blood-coded software like it was theirs. Poetic, isn't it? They buried the sun and raised a clone. But here's the thing about code, it remembers. Every time they use my system, it logs activity. And every line still has my fingerprint. Which means, legally, I still have them by the throat. They thought I was out of the game. They were about to learn the difference between legacy law and digital war. I didn't rage. I didn't scream. When I found out my father and cousin had stolen my code, I did the one thing they never expected me to do. I got calm. Revenge isn't just about retaliation. It's about precision. And I had 2 advantages they hadn't counted on. 1, I knew every inch of the stolen code, because I wrote it. 2, I still had legal control over it, whether they realized it or not. When you create something from scratch, you don't just sign away the rights. You embed licensing metadata, usage trackers, even cryptographic signatures that verify authorship in court. Especially if you're paranoid. Which I was. I opened my laptop and pulled up the embedded license agreement for the Linkverse X module. There it was, plain as day. Owner, Javier Reyes. Transfer limitations, not to be sublicensed, resold, reverse-engineered, or transferred without written authorization from creator. And guess what? There was no written authorization. No contract. No licensing rights. Because they stole it before I incorporated DocaLink officially. Before I even trademarked it. But the logs were there. Time-stamped. Fingerprinted. Legally binding in a federal court, especially when attached to code that's now worth tens of millions. And I had something else. A paper trail. June had already traced the software's movement. From Lorenzo's unauthorized download to the Git repo. From there to the offshore mirror. Then to Valley Core Solutions, the shell company registered under my father's name. They thought hiding it in Delaware would protect them. I'd seen better corporate smokescreens from Reddit threads. So I started building a case. I gathered the original codebase and hash values. The unique fingerprint in the header file, // built by Reyes. The download logs from our server. The unauthorized IP address trace. The metadata on the shell company. The internal memo they leaked bragging about a new AI partnership. I put it all in a secure encrypted folder and labeled it Exhibit A, when legacy gets lazy. Then I called an old friend from law school, Mila Reed. She'd gone the IP litigation route after graduation and had become something of a legend in Silicon Valley for eviscerating corporate thieves. I didn't say much. Just, I need to bury a firm. Her voice sharpened. Who? My family. After a long pause, she said, send everything. Within 24 hours, she confirmed what I already knew. You've got them cold. This is textbook IP theft and fraud. If we file civilly, you'll win. If we go criminal, well, we're not talking jail yet, but sanctions. License suspensions. Reputation annihilation. That's on the table. Music to my ears. But I wasn't ready to strike just yet. Not until I prepared the real blow. Because filing a lawsuit would be satisfying, but public humiliation. That was better. So I came up with a plan. I called my CTO, Valerie. Told her we needed to push out an emergency update to all instances of the DokuLink AI backend, including Linkverse X. Because yes, even that stolen copy was still phoning home. Quietly. Stealthily. Like I designed it to. Are we doing a kill switch? She asked, eyebrow raised. No, I said. Something more elegant. We created a pop-up. One that would only display on illegal instances of our software. A signature-triggered warning that would activate during a standard document scan. Here's what it said. Unauthorized software detected. This version of DokuLink AI is illegally deployed and in violation of intellectual property rights. Activity has been logged. The creator, Javier Reyes, retains full legal ownership. You are using stolen technology. Legal action pending. Enjoy the show. We tested it twice. Then pushed it live. The trigger was time delayed. It would activate in 48 hours. And that wasn't all. I made a few quiet calls to reporters I'd met during the post-acquisition interviews. Not the clickbait bloggers. The serious ones. The investigative journalists who loved a good takedown, especially one involving elite law families, tech disruption, and betrayal. I sent them everything. Every receipt. Every trace. Every quote. Every disgusting detail. One of them responded with just 4 words, this is career-ending. Perfect. And for the cherry on top. I RSVP'd, yes, to the annual Cortez and Burke Legacy Gala. Yes, that gala. The one they host every spring to show off to their elite donors, clients, and partners. I was still on the email list, apparently they hadn't scrubbed me yet. It was being held at the Four Seasons in Chicago. Black tie. Champagne towers. Speeches. And this year's theme? The future of law. I almost choked on my whiskey. Because the future they were stealing. It had my name on it. The night of the gala, Chicago was dressed in diamonds. Glass towers glistened in the dusk. A light snow dusted the sidewalks. Valets in black gloves opened car doors for politicians, judges, and the kind of people who had their wealth embroidered into their socks. I arrived alone. In a tailored black tuxedo. No entourage. No press badge. No name tag. Just me, and a plan so sharp it could slice a dynasty in half. The Cortez and Burke Legacy Gala had always been my father's playground. A parade of legacy handshakes and thin smiles. Every table was an investment. Every conversation a transaction. And this year, they'd built it bigger. A 3-story ballroom at the Four Seasons, crystal chandeliers hanging like galaxies, and a projection on the back wall that read, "The future of law, powered by integrity, legacy, and innovation." I actually laughed. They were standing on my shoulders and didn't even know it. I walked past the check-in. One of the greeters blinked when she saw me. "Mr. Corte," she stopped herself. "Mr. Reyes. You're on the list." "Of course I am," I said with a smile. The room was full of ghosts. Old professors. Distant cousins. My mother's bridge club. And, front and center by the stage, the head table. Judge Miguel Cortez. My father. Flanked by my mother, Donna, and Lorenzo, the golden idiot in a $3,000 suit, sipping champagne like he earned it. None of them had seen me yet. I walked the room slowly, every handshake deliberate, every nod surgical. The air buzzed with faux courtesy and suppressed ego. But the smiles wavered when they realized who I was. Word had already started to spread. The Tribune story. The whispers about an acquisition. The rebrand. But they didn't know the real reason I was here. Not yet. At exactly 7:58 p.m., I felt my phone buzz. A single message from Valerie. Deployed. Warning triggered. Live sync activated. That meant every illegal instance of DocaLink, including the one powering Cortez and Burke's new, cutting-edge AI platform, had just displayed my custom pop-up on every staff computer. I could imagine it now. Paralegals freezing mid-click. Associates staring in confusion. And Lorenzo, somewhere, realizing that the system they bragged about didn't belong to them. I didn't have to imagine for long. At 8:02 p.m., I watched Lorenzo glance down at his phone. His face fell. He whispered something to my father. Miguel's jaw clenched. My mother paled. Then they all turned, together, toward me. I raised my glass. And smiled. The music dimmed. A woman in pearls took the stage to introduce the keynote speaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Judge Miguel Cortez, founding partner of Cortez and Burke LLP." Polite applause. My father stood. Buttoned his suit. Smoothed his hair. Walked to the mic. He looked, shaken. But not broken. Not yet. He launched into a speech I'd heard versions of my whole life. About legacy. About honor. About integrity. About how his firm was embracing innovation with a new proprietary AI system. I nearly choked on my drink. That's when I raised my hand. Just slightly. Enough to catch Lorenzo's eye. And slowly mouthed, "Enjoy the show." He looked down at his phone again, probably reading the second message I had programmed to pop up 5 minutes later. This illegal use has been reported to the American Bar Association, the Illinois IP Fraud Division, the U.S. Copyright Office, the Chicago Tribune, and your clients. Good luck. By the time my father finished his speech, the buzz had already spread. Phones were vibrating. A junior partner left the table in a hurry. Someone at the back whispered something about IP theft. By dessert, it was full-blown whispers to murmurs to panic. That's when she arrived. Mila. My attorney. She didn't come for the food. She came to serve. 2 cease and desist orders. 3 subpoenas. And 1 devastating smile. She handed them directly to Lorenzo and my father, in front of the board, in front of the press, in front of God and everyone. I didn't even have to say a word. But I did. I walked to the mic as they stood frozen. Tapped it twice. The room quieted. Some of you may know me as Javier Cortez, I said. But that name no longer belongs to me. It belongs to them. I turned toward my parents. My name is Javier Reyes. And I'm the creator of the software this firm illegally used to impress you tonight. A gasp rippled through the crowd. My father opened his mouth. I raised a hand. Don't. You've said enough. I looked around the room, into the eyes of the people who had dismissed me, ignored me, laughed at me. You wanted innovation, I continued. You just didn't want it from me. So you stole it. And now, the very system you built your next chapter on is mine. I turned, walking off stage to thunderous silence. And as I passed my father's table, I leaned in and whispered. You called me a disgrace. Now you'll spend the rest of your career explaining why your firm runs on stolen code. The next 72 hours were a blur of chaos. Every legal blog, tech outlet, and Chicago newspaper ran the story. AI creator outs family law firm for IP theft, at their own gala. Javier Reyes shames judge father in public showdown. Cortez and Burke accused of using stolen legal tech software in multi-million-dollar scandal. It was everything I had envisioned. Mila filed the official lawsuit that Monday morning. The cease and desist crippled their AI deployment. Clients started pulling contracts. Their biggest partner, McCallum Ventures, issued a statement saying they were reassessing professional affiliations. By Thursday, their PR firm had quit. By Friday, their website listed technical issues on the services page. By Saturday, I'd been offered a full feature in Forbes. It felt perfect. Clean. Final. But perfection has a way of cracking right when you stop watching. Because that Sunday, as I was sipping coffee on my Austin balcony, Mila called me with a voice like cracked glass. You need to sit down. I was already sitting. Cortez and Burke filed a counterclaim. I blinked. A countersuit? For what? For slander. Defamation. And breach of fiduciary duty. What? It's not going to stick, but it's not meant to. It's meant to stall the original case. To slow it down. Tie you up. Drag this through the courts for months, maybe years. My mouth went dry. They're playing dirty, she said. But we have them. The logs. The fingerprints. The metadata. The shell company. They're arguing the code wasn't substantially proprietary because it wasn't patented at the time of cloning. They're claiming Lorenzo contributed to early iterations. They've even produced mock-up emails claiming shared development. I stood up, pacing. They faked emails? Yes. And they're using your family history against you. That you showed them prototypes. That you spoke at family dinners about ideas and execution. That you invited input. I nearly dropped the phone. It wasn't just stalling. They were trying to rewrite history. I had built every line of that code. Alone. In a basement apartment lit by LED strips and caffeine. Lorenzo didn't know Python from a Python snake. But perception? That's what they were playing with now. And they knew exactly how to twist it. Will it hold in court? I asked. No, Mila said. But it muddies the water enough to make investors nervous. It paints you as volatile. Emotional. A genius, maybe, but reckless. And if they file for arbitration, they can keep it all out of public court. I clenched my jaw. I could feel my father's hand in this. He'd always been a master of quiet warfare, never stabbing you, just surrounding you until you surrendered. But I wasn't 15 anymore. I wasn't scared of shadows and slammed doors. What do we do? I asked. We push back. Hard. We subpoena their logs. Their email servers. We pull every version of the code. We show the evolution. Your commits. Your timestamps. We expose the fakes. I want to go public, I said. She hesitated. That could make things worse. They're already worse. If they want a war of narrative, I'll give them one. That night, I sat down and recorded a video. Just me and a camera. No suit. No PR team. Just a hoodie and the truth. I told the whole story. How they dismissed my work. Called me a disgrace. Tried to control me. Then stole what I built and passed it off as their own. I walked through the timeline. The evidence. The metadata. And I ended with this. I didn't go to war with my family. They declared it the day they took what wasn't theirs. You can say I'm emotional. You can say I'm angry. I am. But I'm also right. And the truth? It leaves fingerprints. I uploaded it. Within 24 hours, it had 2.3 million views. Tech Twitter exploded. Legal Reddit began compiling the case like it was a murder board. Former interns at Cortez and Burke began leaking internal memos anonymously. One even emailed me personally. They knew. Lorenzo bragged about it in the break room. Said you didn't deserve to be the only genius. I forwarded it to Mila. But it was my sister, Elena, who delivered the final twist. She hadn't spoken to me in months. Always stayed neutral. But that Wednesday, I got a message. You need to see this. Don't tell Mom I sent it. Attached was a voice memo. From my father's office. In it, I heard him. Clear as day. It doesn't matter if he has proof. What matters is the narrative. If we paint him as unstable, angry, vindictive, they'll stop listening to the facts. He's brilliant, but that brilliance makes him dangerous. And if he burns the house down, nobody wins. He paused. Then added. But if we win this, I want Lorenzo to run the tech division. Not Javier. That door is closed. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I pressed play again. Over and over. Until my hands stopped shaking. They never planned to make it right. They only ever planned to win. Even if it meant destroying me. That's when I stopped feeling pain. And started feeling cold. Because I wasn't fighting for revenge anymore. I was fighting for truth. And when you're fighting for truth, you don't negotiate. You finish it. The court date was set for 9:30 a.m. on a gray Thursday in late March. I arrived early. No entourage. Just Mila and a quiet confidence that had taken a long time to earn. Outside the courthouse, the media vans were already in place. Camera crews adjusting tripods. Journalists murmuring into microphones. The buzzword in every headline. Legacy versus innovation. Inside, my father sat at the defendant's table, stony-faced in a navy suit. Lorenzo beside him, flipping through a binder he didn't understand. They didn't look at me. Good. Because I didn't come for eye contact. I came for consequences. The judge took the bench at 9:34. Federal jurisdiction. Intellectual Property Division. The courtroom was tense, every chair filled with curious spectators and legal interns pretending not to be impressed. We started with the code lineage. Mila walked the court through a forensic timeline of my code base, commit by commit, timestamp by timestamp. Screenshots. Logs. IP addresses. Source files. My digital fingerprint stamped on every iteration. Then came the email metadata analysis, proving that Lorenzo's contributions were fabricated. The emails were doctored, backdated, and full of terms he never used in real life. We had syntax analysis and expert testimony from a digital linguist who tore them apart like tissue paper. And then, the voice memo. Elena had testified in private the week before, submitting the clip legally and under seal. When it played in the courtroom, the silence was absolute. If we paint him as unstable, they'll stop listening to the facts. The judge stopped the audio midway through and turned to their side of the courtroom. "Counselor, would you like to respond?" Their attorney looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. "I believe we'd like to request a settlement conference." "No," I said. Out loud. Firm. Final. The judge looked at me. "Mr. Reyes?" "I decline settlement," I replied. "I'm here for judgment." There was a pause. Then he nodded. "So be it." By the end of the hearing, the judge's ruling was clear. Cortez and Burke was found liable for IP theft, fraudulent misrepresentation, defamation, and violation of federal copyright protections. Lorenzo was banned from practicing law indefinitely pending ethics review. Judge Miguel Cortez was referred to the Judicial Conduct Board. Damages awarded, $23.5 million in penalties and a full public apology to be issued across 3 platforms, print, digital, and video. But the best part? Their entire AI infrastructure was ordered dismantled and audited, with my software's usage forcibly removed and replaced, at their cost. Their empire burned to the ground. After court, I walked out the front steps to a wall of cameras. I didn't run from them. I let them ask. "Do you feel vindicated? Was this about money or justice? What would you say to your father now?" I looked into the lens. Some stories aren't about revenge. They're about reminding the world that you cannot silence truth, not forever. My father called me a disgrace. He said my work didn't matter. But the system he tried to replace me with, that was mine. So no. I'm not angry. I'm free. And I meant it. I walked down those steps with nothing left to prove, and no chains left to carry. The Forbes feature came out a month later. They called it, "From Disowned to Dominant, How Javier Reyes Took Down a Legacy Law Empire." DocaLink AI's value tripled overnight. Venture capitalists came knocking. Harvard invited me to guest lecture on legal tech disruption. But I wasn't interested in teaching. I was building again. This time, something bigger. Smarter. Unmistakably mine. I bought a lake house. I deleted my father's number. I stopped looking over my shoulder. And one morning, I got a letter. Not from Miguel. Not from Lorenzo. From my mother. Handwritten. Neat cursive. "I don't know what to say to you. I'm ashamed. Not of you, but of how I didn't stand up for you. I see now what we tried to destroy. And I hope someday, you'll let me try to rebuild something. If not as a mother, then as someone who finally understands. You were never the disgrace. We were." I didn't write back. Not yet. But I didn't burn the letter either. I keep it in my drawer. Right next to the cease and desist that changed my life. Because forgiveness is a process. But justice? That was served. In the end, truth has a way of surfacing, even if it comes twisted through pain and betrayal. As one wise voice once said, sometimes your greatest enemy was once your closest ally. If this story struck a chord with you, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and spread the word, because justice deserves to be heard.